Hello everyone, welcome to our webinar Best Practices for Securing Open Banking and Financial APIs with Keycloak. I am Mishika Lakhwani and on behalf of WalkingTree Technologies, I am thrilled to have you all here today. We have got an exciting session planned to discuss how open banking and API integrations has emerged as a cornerstone of innovation, fundamentally transforming how institutions deliver value to their customers. Before we get started, let's take a moment to welcome those who are just joining us. For those who are new to WalkingTree Technologies, a big warm welcome. We are a company that focuses on providing solutions that leverage AI, open source frameworks, and other groundbreaking technologies. Our mission is to empower business by delivering tech solutions that drive efficiency, scalability, and innovation. We want this webinar to be as interactive as possible. Feel free to ask questions in the Q&A section at any time. If something stands out to you or you have thoughts to share, the chat feature is always open. Alright, so without any further delay, let me introduce our fantastic speakers of today's session. First up, we are honored to have Suman Ravuri, the VP of Engineering at WalkingTree Technologies. He is a key leader in the digital transformation journey, having spent over 10 years at WalkingTree building high-performing teams to tackle complex projects for international clients using advanced technology. A lifelong learner, he continually seeks knowledge and inspires his team through empathy. Focused on progress, Suman collaborates with a diverse team of experts to create innovative solutions. Next, we have Ranjit Battewad, the principal architect, has been with WalkingTree for nearly a decade, growing into a leader who manages global clients across the various industries. He actively mentors his team and is committed to excellence throughout the development lifecycle. His expertise includes web and mobile technologies such as JavaScript, EXTJS, React.js, Node.js, PostgreSQL, MongoDB, Cordova, and Java/J2EE. Ranjit believes that every project must achieve excellence to be considered complete. So today's key topic include the designing robust security blueprints, enabling secure third-party data sharing, implementing unified identity management, and navigating evolving compliance requirements with continuous authentication. Solution. This session is designed to equip decision makers with actionable strategies to fortify their digital infrastructure and embrace future-ready security practices. By the end of this session, we hope you will have the actionable insights and strategies to bring these technologies into your organization. Without any delays, let's get started with Suman. Suman, the virtual stage is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mishika. I would like to say thank you for all the people who joined this session. A warm good morning, good evening to all of you. So we'll start with this. Our today's topic of discussion, our webinar topic is securing open banking through Keycloak. So to get started with that, so first we need to understand what is this open banking. So what kind of things are embedded in this open banking? Okay. So primarily the open banking is all about uh, allowing the people to share the data in a trusted and secured manner. Maybe if you go 10 years, 15 years back, if you have a bank account or you have some financial transaction happening in the bank, the data is always residing inside the bank itself, and getting that access of the data is very difficult. And even if you have to get the access of the data, mostly the data will be coming in the paper format, but not in the digital format. So, and it's very secure. That means, so only you can access the data. Even if it comes, it will be coming in the a physical paper where you have to take the printout of your transactions. So that was the case. But over a period of time, people thought that, okay, if you keep the data only with the banks and it's not allowing people to be innovative about their financial transactions or other third party systems to understand this data and take some smart decisions. So that opportunity was not there at all a couple of years back. So that's where this open banking policy started evolving, and it already started doing a lot of work. Many countries are already implementing it. So what is open banking is? It is about uh, allowing banks or financial institutes to share customer data. So they can share the customer data, but securely to a third party providers via APIs with with a customer consent. So here the words are very important. So we should have a customer consent. That means without a customer consent, a banks or financial institutes should not share the data. And even when you are sharing with customer consent also, it must be shared securely, so that the data, there is no data loss or there is no unwanted things happening with that data. Okay, so that's the open banking in a nutshell. And why do we need this open banking to happen? Okay, so primarily the open banking, whoever initially thought about this open banking, these policies and all, whatever they envisioned is that this enhances competition, fosters innovation, and brings a financial transparency. So this is primarily uh, example. Okay, if I have the data available, so a customer and user can have some innovative ideas. Okay, I have these many transactions I'm doing. Can I do something different based on that? Okay, some kind of analysis that he can do himself, so that he can take a better financial decision. So this allows a competition also, and in terms of who provides a better services, in terms of sharing the data, so that customer feels happy about it, and brings a transparency that okay, what is happening, I'll know what is happening within the bank about my transactions. Okay, so that's where these objectives are. And it's not that open banking is very new, it's already started doing some work. Many of you must be using a lot of tools. Maybe a good example in India is like a GPay is one example. May not be exactly entire open banking, but it comes under the gamut of open banking. So based on by doing a button click, you should be able to know the balance in your bank account, and you can do a simple transaction also. So those are all the really an advantages of this open banking system. There are many other tools came in. Example, tools like Perfios in India. That tool allows high net worth individuals to do a better planning about their financials. Okay, and whatever those initially people thought at the time of writing these open banking policies are whatever they're envisioning, they are kind of coming to realize, and people started gaining those benefits. It fostered innovation and enhanced competition. We have seen some results already, but some more results, a lot of good results we are going to see in future. So that's a brief about open banking. Then what are the core components in open banking? So one of the core component is the API, this application programming interfaces, that allow that facilitate a secure data transfer or a sharing between banks and third-party providers. So APIs are an important component. And second is an important component, there is a regulation. The regulation is primarily, mostly in majority of the regions in our world, is governed by the uh, government agencies or directly by governments, or in very some cases it is being governed by the market dynamics also, or a group of institutes together. They're governing, they're putting these regulations in place. These are important regulations because we systems are uh, they want to create a common platform for everyone to thrive innovation and put competition to give better services to the customers. So regulation is an important ingredient or core component for the open banking. And a third, a very important aspect is the customer consent. So without customer consent, we should not share our data. So that's a very important aspect. So if you see, one is that the means of sharing the data, APIs, and the regulations, and the person who is allowing the data to be shared. The guy who owns the data, he is giving a consent to share the data. So these are the three important core components in the open banking. Next slide, please, Ishika. So let's delve deep into this benefits and challenges of the open banking. So primarily the benefits. Let's go with the benefits first. Customer empowerment. So now this open banking gives uh, customers a control over their financial data. Because if you go to the bank site or a bank mobile app, you will have a limited data about what you are doing in that bank, but you may have multiple bank accounts. So then in that case, going to multiple banks and aggregating all of that data is very difficult for you. But if you have some open banking APIs are available, if someone built a very good app for you, then you have a complete control of all the data. Then you can decide, you can do multiple operations around it, and you can decide on how you can understand your spending patterns, and you can find, okay, some innovative way, okay, this is how I'm spending. I can change my spending pattern also. And second is enhanced services. So people can build personalized financial products like budgeting tools, some kind of tailored lending, and sometimes maybe you may choose to share your financial data to some other bank when you want to process the loan for yourself. Okay, so that's a choice, because based on your financial data, so other banks can also take an informed decision about uh, to give loan to you at a higher interest rate or lower interest rate. And the innovation, it drives creation of a new financial services. uh, People can uh, innovation can happen because the moment data is available, data is new oil, and you can drive a lot of innovation around it. And the fourth is an important aspect, competition. So this competition is primarily that the customer is God. So any banking or any organization that is providing services, so have they will compete with each other to provide better services. So this helps overall a better customer experience for the people. Okay. So competition enhances a customer experience. Okay. It will automatically benefit the end users. Okay. So these are the key benefits of open banking. Then the challenges, because when we are addressing these benefits, we also need to be aware of the challenges. So primarily the data privacy is one thing that we should be very careful. So we should ensure the robust security is in place so that we are protecting the customer data. Then sometimes we may get into a challenge that certain old banks or orthodox systems may not be open to adopt to it. That will be a challenge, but at least my feeling is that if they are not able to change uh, as per the uh, new standards with the time, I think they will not be able to compete. So adoption will happen, but whoever adopts slowly, they may not survive. And the third important aspect is the standardization. So varying API standards across regions. So this is a very interesting, deep topic. That means different regions will have a different API standards. And in case we have a truly international customer who has multiple banks account across multiple regions, if all of that to be aggregated into a single app and a third party sharing, and many of these APIs may not be unified, but integrating them will be tricky. Okay? So that's a very detailed topic. Right now, our focus is primarily in terms of secure data sharing, how we can securely share the data. So standardization of APIs, I think we can have some other session to discuss deep into that. So those are the challenges. So our focus will shift more into the security aspect of it. And as you see in the previous slide, uh, these open banking is primarily regulated by uh, countries or government agencies. So in the next slide, we'll talk about how different countries or different regions have kept different rules around open banking. Okay. So in open banking policies, I've taken a couple of features to compare across multiple regions, Europe, UK, India, Australia, and North America. So why did I choose these regions? Primarily, that these are the regions that are actively doing open banking. Uh, Many other countries or regions outside this list. they're still adopting to this open banking standards. That's why I've taken this come. Hey, Mishika, someone is mentioning that they're not able to see the deck. Okay, I'll continue,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
just see if you can fix this in the background. Okay.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, sorry for the trouble. Uh, the one first feature I'm comparing is a strong customer authentication. So customer must be authenticated. Uh, so in Europe, they are kind of insisting in terms of multi-factor authentication. So in case of multi-factor authentication, they are kind of brought in three Ws. So what customer knows, what customer knows means I know my PIN or I know my password. That is uh, 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 that is one W. Other is that what customer owns. That means customer may be owning a phone, or customer may be owning some device. That is what he owns, what he or she owns. The third is what he or she has. That means a biometric authentication or iris authentication. So when they say this multi-factor authentication, so they kind of insist on at least two Ws. I think you have seen most of the times in examples in terms of your PIN, as well as they start checking you in terms of your phone SIM card also. Maybe many of you might have faced if you're using any third party account aggregator app. Uh, if you change your SIM card many times for a day or two, they'll restrict your transaction to make sure that you're the same guy using your application apart from this login credentials. Okay. So that's where Europe is mandatorily implementing SCA, and UK was part of European Union, but they've taken PSD2 and slightly modified. Not a big change, but they brought in their own open banking rules. Then India is not explicitly mandating multi-factor authentication, but I've seen many apps are really implementing it. Then Australia, not directly, but they also rely on the consent-based sharing. North America is one country. North America and Canada, US and Canada is where the place where there are not a lot of government or government agency regulations, but mostly it is based on the market dynamics or directly an agreement between multiple institutions, different financial institutions or group of financial institutions. Okay, so mostly North America is not really governed by some central regulation, but the rest of the four regions that we're talking, they're all strongly governed by the government agencies. Then access to account. So mandatorily APIs must be there, and APIs must be a secure APIs. Same case with UK, and in India also APIs are mandate for the financial data sharing. And Australia, primarily the consumer data right protection. Under that, APIs should be there. And in Northern America, it is primarily voluntary, but driven by the market initiatives. Then third-party providers. So who regulates those third-party providers? Uh, so again, government agencies regulate these third-party providers in Europe and UK. India, it is being regulated by RBI, Reserve Bank of India, and in Australia, it is being regulated by the ACCC. So again, North America has no regulation, specific regulation, but mostly they follow the bilateral agreements or market standards. Okay. Again, transparency part. Uh, so Europe prohibits any surcharges, and free transparent fee must be transparent. System should tell how much fee you are charging for a given transaction. That must be this one. Okay. UK is close to UK is close to Europe, and India, as such, there is no restriction on the surcharges, but it should be transparent, and the people should know how much they're being charged for a given transaction. And again, same case with Australia. But again, North America, there are no federal mandates. And in terms of consumer rights, so Europe has advanced, enhanced refund rights and reduced fraud liability. Uh, Same case with UK. But in case of India, it is more like a consumer consent driven data sharing. Australia is also primarily a consent mechanism driven. And in case of North America, it's primarily institutions. They have their own specific uh, focus on the sector level privacy. In terms of security standards, Europe is having very strong GDPR. So they insist that it is in alignment with the GDPR, strong security for the strict security for payments. Same case with UK. And in case of India, it is under RBI norms. And in Australia, it is under CDR. And in North America, it is primarily voluntary security frameworks. And some states have their own specific rules around it, especially California has a specific rules around it. Okay? So that means if we were going for implementations across different regions, we need to keep uh, these different changes, these different variations in consideration. That's why I've covered this here. So we can move to the next slide. Yeah. Now we are getting into a technical part of it. So as I've explained about open banking, now I have my colleague Ranjit with me. He'll be taking us through the Keycloak part of it, and he will explain how what is Keycloak and how Keycloak can be used for the different security stuff. So over to you, Ranjit.
Thank you, Suman. Hello, everyone. It's all about the securing your access, secure access to your resources. So let's unlock the secrets of securing your access with using Keycloak. Keycloak is an open source identity and access management server. It's primarily like the Red Hat sponsored solution for authentication and authorization. So we'll see that like what are the core features of Keycloak, like a single sign-on. Single sign-on means like a user authentication process that allows users to access multiple applications from the set of single credentials. So instead of remembering the multiple credentials for the different applications, so Keyclocks help us to like use the same credentials, which will help us to log in under different applications. And then you'll see the like identity brokering. Identity brokering is primarily playing then a middleware role, intermediate role that allows your application to authenticate with like external identity providers, something like in a Google, Facebook, or then Instagram. So that's one of the like kind of cool feature which Keycloak provides. That means that if the user has an already existing accounts on their any of the social platforms, so you can eliminate remembering like an additional credentials, and you can leverage the same credentials using Keycloak. So example, like in a use case, you can say that like if your organization or the company already in a Google Workspace, right, and you don't want to create an additional credential for those users to access their all the internal applications. So, but once it is authenticated to the Google and all the applications which is hosted on the intra portal, that will be accessed through the Keycloak. Okay. Role-based access. Keycloak provides a role-based access. That means like this is the primarily comes an authorization part, regulating access resource based on the role assigned within an organization in that particular application, what role user is playing, like something like an admin or editor or then a viewer. So based on that roles, Keycloak provides a way to provide more granular information. Fine-grained authentication. So fine-grained authentication is also like at minute level in not only the resources, but at each resource attribute level also. Keycloak provides a way to you can configure based on the roles and user. Then the multi-factor authentication. So multi-factor authentication like can adds an extra layer of security to the like a traditional single-factor authentication process. Okay, so like, why do we need an MFA? So you already know that like today's security landscape, relying solely on the password is very, it's not sufficient. Okay, due to the like phishing attacks, password breaches, and the other security threats, like MFA are the additional security in order to avoid an unauthorized access. And Keycloak provides an MFA using like one-time passwords and biometric authentications, hardware keys. So using biometric authentication, it ensures that fingerprint scannings, like and facial recognitions, which is like highly secured and very difficult for the hackers to like or attackers to crack that. Hardware devices like an UB keys also can be integrated with the keyclocks, which can be like generate on a, like a physical hardware device using cryptographic methods, and that can be like it's very difficult for the attackers to crack that and security breach. Next slide, please. So centralized in terms of the security highlights, what kind of security Keycloak provides is a centralized security management. So what happens like manage user credentials, like Keycloak comes with a unified console where uh, user management, role management, and all the access regarding the particular policies can be managed in a single place instead of managing for all the application in respective place and handles. So you can manage in common portals. Encryption and secure communication. So all this communication will happen over an SSL and TLS protocol, which can help us to like encrypt very sensitive information such as tokens, password, or any PII information, which will be encrypted when you see the network calls. So that also will be done. Okay. Session and the token management. It helps us to like manage the sessions and then and a token as well. Okay. Handles ensures like you can automatic logouts. You can say that like session timeouts. You can set out the session period like maybe you can specific to the 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and automatically the session will be logged out after a certain time. You can put the session timeouts like if it reaches an expiration time, it should automatically expire and user must log in again to ensure they continue their session. Okay. Can be implemented using session timeout. The server is periodically checking at the client side at the browser. You can handle that periodically checks with the server side if the session is expired, and you can handle that. Uh, as well as the session renewal. So if the session is going to expire, you can go and renew the sessions using the renewal of APIs provided by Keycloak, and you can continue with your transactions. Multi-factor authentication, which we already saw that multi-factor authentication is like in this security landscape. So it adds an extra additional layers of security using the OTP biometrics and the secure devices. Next slide, please. So here we'll see that like how the Keycloak provides an OAuth 2.0 and OpenID Connect protocol. These are the standard secure protocol which Keycloak provides. Okay, and how that works. So if you see that like third-party client, so any client which you're trying to access your resources, which is here the API, first it goes and connects to your identity server and gets identity server provides in a code based on your right credentials. And that code will be passed in order to get the token, and identity provider provides in a token back to your client, and that token will be passed out to your API gateways or the actual resources. And API gateway will inbuilt will talk to then identity provider here in case in Keycloak and validate whether this token is a valid or not. If it is invalid, it will start serving the responses. So it has both sides. You can say mutual this one. At the client side as well as in the server side, authentication will happen for your tokens. Next slide, please. Yeah, implementing a secure API authentication using the Keycloak. So why this API? So primarily we develop an APIs for simplifying an application development, flexible deliveries, the data integration, and the performance. But all comes with and again the securing these APIs is also equally important, right? So in a securing API, we can do the security using the token management, like short-lived access tokens. We can do that, and that tokens will be expired after certain predefined time. Okay, users we can use a different mechanism like a refresh tokens. Again, the mutual TLS is one of the like a very important part. Like is a robust security protocol which ensures the client and the server authenticate each other during the communication. Okay, so unlike standard TLS, which is only validated at a server-side identity. Okay, but the mutual TLS ensures that both the client and servers validate. Okay, So how this mutual TLS works? So client and server both exchange the certificates with each other, validates that against your identity providers. And if the both are like an agreed and validated, so they will establish a secure connection and start sharing the information, and they will ensure that while transactions are going throughout the session, the security and the data integrity has been maintained. Okay, and fine grain access as well, like you can maintain scopes like once your like user is authenticated, but as a like authorization at like whether this user which is trying to request, or then a client which is trying to request your resources has a right access or not based on the role, at what attribute level, and more granular level information also Keycloak provides that. So something like a read access or write access, maybe read access also, not all the under the particular resource, not all the attribute has access to particular user, right, or particular role. So based on the roles, attribute level also, you can configure using a Keycloak by defining a different policies and scopes at a resource level. Next slide, please. Okay, dynamic client registration. So some applications might require, or APIs required in registrations, which can be it has to go through the based on the business different use cases for the standard workflows that if the client a resource or the client request for that, it has to be authenticated and approved by the certain authority. Then we can predefine that flow in the Keycloak, and as per that, when user trying to register that, it will go for an consent, and once an admin user consent provides that, then user will start allowing to log in and start consuming those resources. So this also is possible. Secure data encryption, like data encryption with a secure like TLS protocols, it provides that and encrypts the tokens, like it's encrypts sensitive information, like stores the PII passwords and the tokens information. API gateway, Keycloak provides allows an integration with like a different API gateways like a Zool, Kong, and what happened like with the Kongs, Kong kind of like an API gateways we can handle. So primarily Keycloak or identity provider comes with an authentication authorization, but like securing a more in terms of a rate limiting or anomaly detection, that can be handled very well at an API gateway level, as well as in order to ensure the regulatory compliances, all these activities where user trying to access resources, what kind of attributes access, everything, the log will be tracked at a Keycloak level, so that at any moment tomorrow, any data breaches happen, so we can go and track minute detail at what particular instance of time, who has an access, what resources, and what kind of information has been shared. Next slide, please. So here is like how we can implement a secure API authentication using Keycloak. So if you see the third party provider something like a fintech application, which you want to like provide or expose your services or an internet, and it has to be accessed through the only the authorized peoples. So what happens is like the request will come to the fintech client or the fintech provider, and then it will fintech application, and it comes within a token, and that token will be like send it to the Keycloak provider and validates whether the Keycloak using the code and authentication token. So in the token, it has all the scopes and everything inbuilt. So based on the scope, it get back to the API gateway, will redirect it to the respective services. And like here, accounts APIs or payment or any other APIs like in KYCs. So it will validate that what kind of scope it has, and based on the scope, it will start performing their actions and serves that. So all this is like the about how the Keycloak and we can implement different features in using the Keycloak identity provider, which is open source popular. We'll see that like most of the time due to different reasons, we might need to share the users information or the particular transaction information, financial information within different systems, not only the different organizations, but in the same organization, different applications, which is not part of the same application. So that will be shared using the customer consent. So what are the different key components of the customer consent? We'll see that like explicit informed consent application, which is required this information to be shared to different application, will start or trigger then a consent request user, and it will trigger and notify through the like push notifications or then emails, and user will go and like accept that consent and understand that what kind of information is it is asking to share it, Okay, and why it is sharing, everything information will be provided. And once after users consent is provided, it will start sharing in this information. So that like, and as part of a non-repudiation, so tomorrow if due to any reason customer says that like that, okay, hey, this is not provided by me, it has an all the consent has given at what time, which application or which client has raised this consent, okay, and when it's been initiated, who has been approved, all those action had been written tracked for an audit purposes tomorrow, and any breaches has happened, so we can go and track on that. And it ensures a data integrity as well, like securing information, PI information securely, data validation, like an right information has to be shared, and all of this will be like what information at what time has been shared. It will be keep a log of that one. Data security, so like while transferring the data to the different application while sharing, encryption has to be taken care, and Keycloak ensures that all the PI information which you are sharing or a network, it will be secure, which is then encrypted, and ensure that all the confidential information what is provided in the consent, that is only shared, not other than that. Next slide, please. So this is the primarily all about the like an authentication authorization, but sometimes based on the business use case, to business, we have the risk-based authentication also. If your application, general financial application will have a very high risk of security, right? So continuous authentication will work on the identifying the sessions, not just in a login and authorization, but we can have then a risk-based authentication also. You can define a risks in a Keyclocks, and risk will have in like a scores and the levels as well, like a low risk, medium risk, and high risk, based on the user's behavior, how he has been consuming or utilizing these resources. So you can identify and keep on scoring that resources, something like that. Suppose your resource is like you're trying to access or doing the transaction, which is very high value. So in that case, you can mark that, give it a score for that particular risk, and and then once the risk is matched with your security severity level, like a high risk, which is a high value transaction, maybe in more in amount, so you can raise that like okay, it has to be an OTP validated as well. Like there's an additional security, you can add that. Okay, hey, send it an OTP or make an API call. Okay, or if the user is trying to log in with the new devices, generally he used to use any particular devices, but suddenly he starts using a new devices. Now in that case, it has to go and communicate to the user that hey, you are trying to use this. This is called the risk-based authentications, which we can do that. Okay, so this is also possible using the Keycloak. Next slide, please. Ensuring the compliance with the regulatory framework. So different compliances will be, and regulatory compliances maintained, and Keycloak very well supported for all of this one, ensuring like all the GDPR or any kind of regulatory compliances, like a user consent management, like for any information which has to shared across an application other than application which user is using, it has the user has to provide the consent, and based on the consent entries, it will start sharing information, and as a right to access that, user can see that, or even the first the client which requested this consent has all the rights to see the and store it data in the Keycloak. Okay, and as an administrator also you can see that, and at any moment customer, if he don't want to continue his this one sharing the information, he can revoke back as well with the right to be in a forgotten information, that administrator can even delete that information as well, okay, if it is no more required. Data protection and security, like supports and like all the secure way of and provided the as role-based access for what kind of role, what kind of information is available, that is also provided, and for all of this in regulatory compliances in order to get it an audit and what kind of activities happening. So audit and monitor as granular as we configured in the system, it will be tracked into the Keycloak, which very well we can track at any moment of time. Suman, I will hand over back to you for the open banking security blueprint. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Ranjit. So, in case of open banking security blueprint, so as Ranjit already covered what the Keycloak can bring into the plate in terms of what we can implement for the open banking security, I'm trying to summarize with some kind of a blueprint. So generally what happens is when user initiates a request, so there will be authentication of the user. Then based on the authentication of the user, once authentication is started, authentication is done, then MFA challenge will be given, multi-factor authentication will happen. Then MFA response comes. And when MFA response also comes, then system issues a token. Then based on this token, then it starts a third-party provider ask for a consent. So the consent request will be going. Then Keycloak will validate whether this consent is already given or not. If the consent is valid, verify this consent. Then based on this, API gateway sends a request to the data to the core banking system. Core banking system responds to the secure data. The data must be written in a secured format, and that data is will be provided to the third-party app. Okay, so this is the very high-level blueprint. Here, every word is important. We need to share bank. When bank is sharing the data, it must be secured, and consent is important. Multi-factor authentication is important, and requesting consent and verifying the consent is there or not is important. So this is a very high level blueprint. And as we go deep, we can further enhance in terms of what is meant by security. So Ranjit's already covered that uh, it is not only just encrypting the data and decrypting the data, and not only about uh, securing the data in terms during the transit, but also about verifying the integrity of the data. So there are a lot of complex rules systems are implementing. The people are implementing to make sure that when core banking systems gives the secure data, these third-party providers are able to interpret it in a much more effective way. So, but I'm not getting deep into every aspect of it, but this can cover at a very high level blueprint for the open banking security. Next slide, please. So what is happening, the current and future? So in the current case, primarily UK, EU, Australia, India, they're leading with the regulated open banking systems. So they're kind of a lot of apps were implemented in UK, EU, and like Northern America and Asia Pacific, they are picking up. Once this open banking takes to some stage, the future is going towards more towards the open finance. So this is going to be extend beyond uh, banking. It also includes into the insurance, pensions, and investments. So all this data will become open insurance, open pensions, open investments kind of mode, so that so much more innovation can be provided. So world is moving towards open finance from open banking, and then integration with AI and machine learning for smarter financial tools. So the system can tell that, okay, based on your past information and the past market volatility or market performance, system with AI and ML, you can take even smarter and wiser decisions for your specific uh, portfolio. So some of the example use case already you might have seen, that account aggregation. This Perfios is one example, and there are apps in European Union also. Uh, so where you can see multiple bank accounts in one app, lending. People are doing the faster and data-driven loan approvals. So because the data is secured and most accurate data is coming from the banks, that's where it can be a faster decision. In the payments is one thing that you're seeing, that seamless API-based payment services without intermediaries. So this is what, and the world is moving towards open finance from open banking. Next slide, please. So these are the some of the case studies that are publicly available, that in terms of using Keycloak to implement for the bank security and in turn into the open banking security. So Hitachi implemented for one of the Japanese bank, and it's again fully financial grade API security policies which are crucial for open banking. There is also Swiss Bank also. Swiss banking also used a Keycloak for the multi-factor authentication uh, for, for their core banking system as well as for the open banking implementation. Next. Yeah. So open banking is the way forward, and it will turn into the open finance, which promotes innovation and customer empowerment. And Keycloak is one of the tool that allows you to quickly implement and ensures it brings required support for you to implement open banking, and it streamlines user experience with extreme robust security. So our call is that uh, adopt Keycloak to unlock the benefits of open banking and drive the future of finance. So with this, I'm coming to the end of our webinar session. Thank you very much for all the guys. Now the floor is open for the question and answers.
Yeah, thank you so much, Suman and Ranjit. Your words are really insightful. So now moving to the Q&A section, I would like our audience to please drop your question in the Q&A section. Our leaders, our speakers will answer the questions promptly. So the first question which we have received from our audience is how can organizations implement multi-factor authentication MFA while maintaining a seamless user experience in open banking APIs?
So
Ranjit, I'll take this question.
sure, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, the answer lies in the because I understand, Mishika, that people whoever asked the question, people will feel that why to enter uh, multiple times or two times authentication. They appear sometimes it's a very challenging stuff. So based on that, I think what people generally do is that sometimes the context-aware FMEA, MFA, that is okay based on the context. If you see high-risk transaction, then you ask for MFA. Otherwise, do not ask MFA. Okay. So that is one this one. So maybe through apply AI or something to figure out whether this transaction is a high risk or if it is a low risk transaction, do not push for MFA. Okay. That's one way. And there are other people are talking about like the passwordless authentication. That is primarily in terms of only you can do. That means your biometric information, your a particular person's biometric authentication or facial recognition or fingerprints. That also an alternative for MFA. Okay. So these are the two different things that we can think about for the multi-factor authentication to make it a better user experience, a seamless user experience.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Suman. So the next question is how can organization proactively detect and prevent API specific attacks such as DDoS, injection attacks, or API abuse?
So primarily, Keycloak is meant for an authentication and authorization, but this API security will be taken care by an API gateway. And that level, we can add it like an rate limiting and all kind of some security threats will be handled at an API gateway level, not at a Keycloak level.
Okay, thank you, Ranjit. Next question is how do evolving regulations like PSD2 and GDPR influence the security protocols required for open banking APIs?
I think see this PSD and GDPR, but GDPR is not really a open banking one, but the PSD2 is a banking one. So they have a strong influence because uh, they put all the regulations. Example, I'm starting a, I want to build, I want to become a third party provider of the data of the open banking data. Unless there is a regulation, that means unless I am enforcing some rules that I should follow so that the data that I'm keeping or that I'm getting access secured, uh, it is not going to fly well because people will not have a trust on the third party providers. So that's where these policies like PSD2 or India's account aggregator policy, all of them enforce regulations to the third party providers so that they all follow certain standards, uh, which ensures a fair competition and a fair innovation.
Okay, thank you, Suman. And the next question is, what role does Keycloak play in securing open banking APIs, and how can financial institute adopt this framework effectively?
Ranjit, would you like to take this or you want me to take this?
Yes, Suman, you can take on.
Sure, sure. See, when third-party partners are accessing the bank APIs, uh, primarily, first of all, third-party partners must be regulated with some some policy. Either the policy is enforced by the government or the policy is agreed between the two financial institutions. Okay? So we must put those kind of a contractual obligations. We can insist that people must follow those standards, and we should also conduct security audits and assessments because that's what RBI does. So if a third party partner has to register, third party provider has to register to get a license of a third party provider, RBI enforces certain things. When all those regulations are, when you're meeting all those regulations, then only you'll get approval for it. So banks alone may not be able to ensure it, but banks with the support of government agencies who can enforce rules and who can give licenses to the account aggregators, together they can ensure uh, they are also following the third party aggregator, third party providers also uh, following the required security standards.
Okay, thank you, Suman. The next question is, how can banks ensure that third party partners accessing their APIs adhere to the same security standards?
Yeah, I think the previous question and both are same to me, but I answered that question in the this one. Idea is that it if all of them have to follow same standards, means it must be regulated. It must be regulated by the some governing system, either PSD2 or account aggregator. What's the previous
Okay.
question?
Yeah, previous one was what role does Keycloak play in securing open banking APIs, and how can financial institution adopt this framework effectively?
Okay. Uh, See, Keycloak brings in uh, multiple features that Ranjit already explained. So maybe people will start with a single sign-on implementation and role-based access, scope implementation. That means only people have the required permission, proper authorization implementation. And then on top of it, putting all this under a gateway, API gateway, so that even if there are multiple attacks, this gateway can start preventing through rate limit. So yeah, banks can have a good kickoff implementation. Maybe start with it should be a single sign-on implementation, then a role-based access, then consent-based system. So it can be a phase-wise approach people can take.
To add more on that, like any applications, bank or financial or banking, which supports the OpenID, OAuth, and the SAML application can be integrated. These are the like standard protocols which Keycloak supports.
Yeah, so the next question is, what techniques are recommended for conducting regular API security assessment and penetration testing?
Yeah. So the techniques is primarily whether you need to do either a static application security testing or a dynamic application security testing. And we should have tools like OSAP to validate any security vulnerabilities. And people can do some kind of threat modeling, and people can do some kind of a fuzz testing in terms of passing randomly at different inputs to APIs, unexpected inputs to API, and how they respond. So there are multiple ways of doing the penetration testing, but the primary recommendation is that do the penetration testing and conduct uh, static security testing and dynamic security testing.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Suman and Ranjit, for sharing your expertise today. So these are the questions we have received, and a huge thank you for all of you for joining us. We hope you find this discussion insightful and inspiring. We are always open for the question and answers. If
Yeah,
you have any,
Mishika.
yeah,
Mishika, one of the person with name Nitish Tomar,
yeah.
he asked a question: how can banks ensure that third-party partners adhere to the same security standards? I think this is the question that you already asked, right?
Yeah, right. I have asked already.
Okay, okay. That's
Okay.
lovely.
So again, a big thanks to all of you for joining us. We hope you find this discussion very insightful and inspiring. We are always open for the question and answers. If you have any questions, please visit us as connect@walkingtree.tech or scan the QR codes on your screen to connect with us. We look forward to hearing from you. Also, I have dropped a questionnaire in the chat section of our webinar. You all can fill the survey form so that we can get your feedbacks. Also, we are excited to announce our next webinar, which is on the topic the power of generative AI for the code quality on the 16th January 2025, 9 p.m. India Standard Time. In this webinar, we'll explore the transformative potential of generative AI in coding from automating refactoring to enhancing security and compliance. Discover how this cutting edge technology can elevate your code quality and streamline development processes. Register now on the QR code displayed on the screen. Thank you and stay tuned for the upcoming events.